Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of my chat with Ankur Warikoo on Take a Pause with me, Varun Duggirala. In this part, I actually spoke to him about how he deals with negativity, mostly inner negativity, how he manages his time, and how he looks at the worst case scenario when he makes every decision. So, before we go to the clip, if you want to watch more parts of this chat, hit subscribe and smash that bell icon. And now let's roll the clip. I remember the first time I interacted with you. We didn't meet backstage. We did a TEDx talk in the same venue. I think there was one in Bandra. Um, there was you, there was me, there was Nikhil Taneja, there were a bunch of others, and that's the first time I think we were in the same space. And I remember for a long time, and you still do. You spoke a lot about failure at that point, and I remember one of the pieces which is so refreshing about your content then was that you were talking about failures at that point, and nobody was talking about failures. I want to kind of go back to that, and I'm going to go to one point which you wrote in your book, which I have lying here next to me with some pieces kind of bookmarked here. And You talk about the fact that saying when you want to make tough decisions in life, ask yourself what's the worst that can happen, and it's something which I truly believe in. Right, it's literally the first chapter of my book as well, which kind of talks about that. So I want you to kind of elaborate on that, and I'd love to kind of go back and forth and saying what that kind of means for you. And in many ways, I want to see how that reflects on what I kind of look at it as.
When I was reading this book, I was like, oh, thank God someone's picked up this page and written an entire thesis of it, because I clearly did such a piss poor job of just throwing it out and saying, समझ लो जो समझना है मैंने बोल दिया जो मुझे बोलना था. So it's like I I was like I hope this lands well. But the idea of this has been again going back to the phase where I came back to India from the US, was when I used this mental model for the first time in my life. I realized that I was good at something that I was doing, and because of that, success as measured by society was coming in rather easy. I was top of my class. I was like fast track, 100% scholarship, all that's nice, happy things. But there was no mojo, there was no vibe, that hum that I thought I would experience, that I was clearly not experiencing. So when I decided to come back, the big question that I asked myself was not, hey, what will I do if this is not what I do? I was like, I want to make the decision of coming back to India and dropping out of my PhD. But if I do that, what's the worst thing that will happen? And I found myself saying, hey, I am fairly certain I will get a job. It won't be the best job. It won't be the job that will make me compare myself with my college and school mates and high five with them. But I am fairly certain I'm never going to die of poverty and hunger. Like, I'm not going to struggle to
Yeah.
survive as much as my parents did. My struggle would be, can I make it in life beyond the orbit that I was born in? But I am frankly not going back in a manner where it's a disaster. I was lucky that I was on a scholarship, so I hadn't even spent my own money. There was no loan that I had taken, nothing whatsoever, right? So this was frankly a decision which had no worst case scenario in the true sense of it. While there was a worst case scenario, I was completely
Hmm.
comfortable with it. And that's the same thing that happened when I got through ISB and I had to take that massive loan for the first time. It's the same thing that happened when I quit my consulting job to become an entrepreneur. It's the same thing that happened when I decided to approach Groupon to buy out Groupon India. It's the same thing that happened when I quit Nearbuy to go on my own and start all over again. I keep asking the same questions. What's the worst thing that will happen? And will I be okay dealing with it? And it was, I think, about 2014 or 2015. I read this book, which is a fascinating book that I will strongly recommend to people around their 30s, not earlier because it may not land well then. And the book's called A Guide to Good Life. And it's a book on Stoicism. It's a very simple introduction to Stoic philosophy, which is a very ancient Roman philosophy. And when I read that, there is an entire thesis of Stoicism which rests on something called the worst case
Hmm.
visualization. And Stoics are meant to visualize their death every single day to be able to appreciate what they have in life. And when I read that, I'm like, whoa, there is actually merit for what I had been experiencing and using all my life. Hi fi. And it's just stayed with me ever since. And I think most people are paralyzed by taking decisions and are fearful of taking the decisions because they are constantly asking themselves whether this will elevate me to the next orbit, which may or may not happen. And frankly, you'll never get to know that answer before you make that decision. But if you were to just optimize for the worst case scenario and be okay with that, you will gather a lot more courage than you think you have within you.
No, I'm stopping myself from having a wide grin because you mentioned stoicism. I believe I survived the last 2 years because I discovered stoicism about 3 years ago, through Ryan Holiday's books primarily, because I mean, I follow a lot of his content. Then went and bought meditations. Then went down like the rabbit hole of all things there. Um, the one thing from stoicism for me has been that focus on things that you can control and not on everything that you can't. I think especially in times like I can't believe I'm doing this. I've mentioned before we started. I will not mention the times that I've been over the last 2 years, but in this context, I will mention it. It's made so much sense because you cannot control everything. You can't control every outcome. You can only focus on what you can do, um, and and I feel that's been one of the best things that I've learned. It's kind of changed my the way I look at the world, the way I look at life. And even what you just mentioned about just like kind of mapping it out, saying what's the worst that will happen, put it down there, and I'm finding more and more things that you and I can kind of align and chat on, even post recording podcast things, because we're literally saying, okay, both of us wrote about worst case scenario, both of us read stoicism, so there's a lot here to kind of unpack. But for me, what was most interesting about what you said is the fact that at every stage you're saying that you look at a worst case scenario and take a choice basis that, and then the choice goes sideways, then you figure out worst case scenario and move on from there, right? I think we often get stuck at that point of,
Correct.
oh, I don't know what to do, so I won't move ahead. And I'm sure you had many of those moments in life. So when you're finding yourself stuck, are you just mapping the worst case scenario, or are you also like, is there something you kind of tell yourself to say, okay, no, you need to move ahead, you can't just be static, you can't be stuck here? What do you kind of tell yourself?
No, as crazy as it may sound, and I don't want to come across as someone who's a know-it-all, I have never genuinely felt stuck in my life, and I've said this often. If there's any person in your life that makes you believe that
Hmm,
you're stuck, that person is your enemy. And unfortunately, for most people, that person is they
exactly.
themselves. And I don't think anybody is stuck in life. Like you can always take the smallest step possible to get you out of that spot. Yes, there may be obstacles on the way, there may be disappointments on the way, there will be failures on the way, there will be disagreements, there will be misalignments, but that's not feeling stuck. That's not believing that you're stuck. You always have a choice. You always have a choice. You're just scared to make that choice. So I've had my moments, several moments where I have been dejected, where I have failed, where I have felt like a loser, where I have felt like an imposter. But at all points of time, I've never felt stuck, and I've always somehow known that I can get out of this. It's just a matter of time, and definitely a matter of my will inside. And then just that makes me move forward. So yeah, it's not a helpful response,
No,
but
I think that's
it is what
that's
it
also
is.
good to kind of know. I've been stuck many times in life. I've been my own worst enemy for I think way too long in at least in my 20s. I feel that I've aged better in my head. I hope is my honest thought most times. But there's something you just said, right? Is that also times when you feel like an imposter, you feel. I think there are enough negative things we put into our own mind, which in many ways clouds what we could actually do. I mean, the world might not even care, right? Like we all have that spotlight effect. I'm walking into a room, everybody's looking at me, everybody's noticing what I'm doing, nobody cares, they're doing their own thing, right? So how do you kind of deal with negative thoughts when you feeling negativity within yourself, not from the outside? I think the outside there's way too much of that happening. But how do you kind of deal with negativity within yourself? And actually then we'll kind of maybe I'll also ask you to kind of dip into how do you deal with people externally who are negative as well towards you.
The big thing is to genuinely surround yourself with positivity, whether it's positive ideas, whether it's positive people, whether it's positive emotions. That's a prerequisite, because it's really hard for someone who's an alcoholic to not have the desire to drink if they're
Yeah.
surrounded by alcohol. It's like motivation is garbage, as Mel Robbins wonderfully says. It is garbage, and we rely on it far too much than it's helpful for. So that's number one. But number two, the negative thoughts for me, I wouldn't want to dismiss them or control them. So, what meditation has really taught me in the last 5, 6 years is you can't control your emotions. You can only be aware of them. And if you do a good job of being aware of your emotions, you will find them as just another car passing by as you stand on the roadside observing it. And that's just it. Those are your thoughts. They will just move by. You will notice them. Hey, that's a Maruti, that's a Wagoner, that is a Honda, that's a whatever it is. It's blue, it's black, it's white, it's whatnot. It's driving fast, it's driving slow, it's stopping, it has someone inside. But you don't possess that car and take it with you. You
Yeah.
just let it go. You just let it go. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned from motivation, that my negative thoughts are like weather. It is bad weather right now. It's eventually going to fade away. And all that I need to do is just be cognizantly aware of what is it that I'm feeling. Like be acutely aware of what is it that I'm feeling, whether it's fear, whether it's anger, whether it's jealousy, whether it's anything. Because the minute I do that, I think the years of meditation has helped, that the point of awareness of an emotion is also the point of disappearance of that emotion for me. And then there's just that moment of not clarity, but that moment of balance. And then I can bring my quote unquote positive self in and say, okay, let's take the smallest step to get us out of this situation.
You mentioned meditation earlier, and oftentimes we see lives today are packed with so many things, right? Like I haven't used Calendly till you sent me that link the other day, and I was like, "Okay, I finally should get onto Calendly. Why don't I do that myself, right? Because I'm this person who has four different calendars and trying to sync them all together at all times and trying to simplify life. One of the things which I've realized is we pack so much into our day. And I remember watching a video which you put out about how you manage your time, and I looked at how you literally ran through your entire Google Calendar and was showing people how you use every period of times. But how do you kind of, if you have to define the way you bring balance in your time, saying there's certain amount of time for work, there's certain amount of time for life, there has to be time for self, because if you don't have time for self, then everything else suffers. How do you kind of look at those three buckets and kind of bring them some sort of balance?
The trick there, Varun, and while I have a lot more control over my time right now, that wasn't the case, let's say 2 years back, right? So for a decade, I just lived life on a calendar, intensely packed and so on. And I struggled with it despite being a very good time management. I pride myself for how I manage my time, and I believe that I do a fairly good job, at least for myself. It works immaculately well. But I struggled because I was just constantly context switching. I was like, okay, there's a marketing conversation right now, then there's a sales conversation right now, then I don't have time for myself, then I've just become a father, then I am this and I'm that, and it's just like, whoa, everything coming in. And at that point of time, I tried something else which really worked for me, which is something that I fully endorse now. The problem with managing different identities and thus different contexts is our brains do a very poor job of
Yeah.
switching context, really poor job of switching context. And it's not hardwired to switch context. For years, we've been doing one thing for hours and hours. And now, suddenly, when we're in this world where everything is happening at the speed of thought, our mind's struggling. And that's what creates that chaos. That's what also creates procrastination. It creates anxiety and everything else attached to it. So, what you have to do, or at least what I thought I should do, is give myself and my mind the time to breathe in into something and let it immerse itself in that for a period of time. And just do that and nothing else. So, what I mean by that is, most people try to fit in their day with everything they have to do. What I shifted was, no, I have to fit my week into everything that I
Hmm.
have to do. I don't think there is anything that I'm doing in life which cannot have a weekly cadence. And if I can get to a weekly cadence, then I'm going to bucket my week in things that I want to do, which means it is possible that Monday to Friday, I will actually not have any time given to
Yeah.
myself. But Saturday will be the time I do nothing but devote myself to myself. And that's when I will do things that I want to. And that will be my recharge. And on Monday, I will only pick up book writing. And on Tuesday, I will only pick up content creation. And on Wednesday, I'll only pick up external meetings. And on Thursday, I'll only pick up hiring. And on Friday, I'll only pick up research. And on Saturday, it will be me time. On Sunday, it will be family time. And you let the world be known of this. You let your own mind be known of this. And then at least I was surprised at how easily I got into the flow and how my mind was so much more productive and I could achieve so much more, both with the anticipation of this is to
Yeah.
follow, like on Saturday I will do this and on Friday I will do this, as against the context switching where I felt busy but I frankly wasn't productive at all.
I think oftentimes we also fall into this trap because we don't. When someone says, "Okay, I just want to do a call, it'll take 10 minutes," you suddenly slot that into your day. Someone else will say, "There's an opportunity for brand wants to talk to you," or there's so many of these things which are. I was reading somewhere that we often spend a lot of our time doing things which seem cool or seem really important, but they actually keep us away from things which are important to us in life. The way you just spoke about structuring your week, how long did it take you to convince everybody else around that this is how you function? Because the worry also is, I think I have a feeling it's an Indian thing as well. We worry about pissing people off way too much, saying, "Ye bura man jayenge," right? It's sort of like you can't say no. Like literally, like half the time, like I'll tell someone, "Don't share my phone number unless I know context." But they'll share it saying, "No, how could I say I cannot? I have your number, so I have to share it." Right? It's as simple as that. Like it's almost basic thing like that. But how did you kind of approach that part, or were you like, did you have prior practice in being able to say no better?
uh, no, I for the longest time I know, I think till about 27, 28, I was a obsessive people pleaser. And all my entire identity was how much do
Yeah,
people like me, and that was not a cool
not
life
at
to
all.
live at all, because I was constantly in the pressure. I was constantly asking myself, oh, why do they not like me, why do they like me, blah 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 blah. And then slowly and gradually I made that shift. So saying no now comes very naturally, and I think I do a polite job of it, because all that I hear is, yeah, we respect that, as against screw you asshole, who do you think you are. But I think the bigger question that you're asking is, how do you orient the world to how
Yeah.
you want to do things at your own end? And the truth is, you can't. That's it. You really can't. You have to get to a point where you either give them that choice, or you bear the consequences of them making the choice that is not in your favor, and you being okay with that because there is a bigger, larger goal that you're working towards. So when I did this, I clearly had to say no to a lot of things. Like, for example, I get up really early in the morning, and because of that, I sleep at 9, 9:30 every day. And thankfully, I have a wife that also sleeps at
Mm.
9, 9:30 every day. We have kids who go to bed at 8
Yeah.
every day. So that is nicely orchestrated. But it does mean that I can't, not I can't, I don't want to go to social dinners and events and hobnob with startup entrepreneurs and go and say, oh my god, I love you, and oh, what would I be without you, blah blah blah. I don't do all of that, and that does mean that I'm saying no to a lot of things that a lot of other people who are my peers or my own ecosystem would be. But I'm totally okay with it, because I know that the value and the benefit that I derive from sleeping early and getting up early is far, 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 far greater than me spending time on dinners that frankly would just make me
Mm.
look cool and sound cool, but are not adding anything. So I don't think you can orient the world to how you want to live life. You just have to make a call of, this is how I want to live my life. This is why I want to live my life the way I want to live it. And now I have just to figure out who is in and who is out.
Do you see that almost orienting your time this way? Right? The sleeping part, my house, everybody is passed out by 8, 8:30 as well. But I am that person who's awake till 10:30 because I'm like, this is my me time. Hope you enjoyed that clip of my conversation with Ankur Warikoo. A lot more coming up in this conversation, but if you haven't caught the earlier clip we dropped, you should definitely check it out. The link is in the show notes, so you can just click and head to that right away. Or if you want to listen to it in its audio form, the entire conversation is available in its audio form across all streaming platforms. So head to the show notes. You'll find a link to that as well. Plus, there's a lot more content dropping around building the right mindset, performing better in life, and for you to find the right motivation. So stay tuned for that. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and smash that bell icon. So till the next one, cheers.